I was home alone on Saturday night. I woke up in my bed. I woke up. I heard Siri talking on my phone. I turned it off. I went back to sleep an hour later. Siri woke me up again. I was a little scared. Siri was responding to a strange sentence. That was it for us. Siri's response was, Thursday, July 4th, 1776. It was strange, but I still dismissed it as an error. I woke up again and Siri said, this is the sentence Siri is saying. I said my full name and her response was, here is my name information. Then I ran to my parents' room. I closed the door and fell asleep there. I still doubt whether it was really an error. I was playing a computer game alone at home. When there was a knock on my window around 2 a.m., my head turned to the window but no one was there. It was winter, so I closed the window and my room was on the first floor. It seems you can call me. As far as I know, I wasn't interested enough to forget about the knock and go back to playing, until another incessant knock came on the window. I was now very uncomfortable with why they were doing this. They couldn't leave me alone. But on the rare chance that they actually needed something, I lifted the curtain and opened the window, only to break it, which was the biggest and stupidest mistake. I reached out from the darkness outside. I grabbed the bottom of the window. I started screaming. The man in black was trying to get into my room. I grabbed the lamp that was sitting on my desk and hit him on the head. He fell out and gave me the chance to close the window. I saw him run away from our property into the darkness. I have never had a more terrifying experience. I live in a village far away, like a village with a paved road closing. I heard something crash. The next hour or so before we could hear the noise coming from inside the chimney, which should have been impossible because we had it covered for the summer. Then the front door started making a noise like someone was trying to pull it open and get in. I looked through the peephole but couldn't see anything. Finally I opened the door and then everything stopped and went quiet. I was alone. One summer I was watching a movie in the living room when I heard some random noises coming from above me. Our living room ceiling is very high, so the attic is the only room above it. I turned the TV down a little. I could hear the random noises coming from there better. The attic was connected to my brother's bedroom through his closet. I went to his closet and opened the attic door. The light was broken so I had to use a flashlight. I took just 2 steps inside, heard the creak of the weak wooden floor on the other side of the attic, and then the sound of something brushing against one of the plastic bags on the floor. I jumped out of the attic, closed the door, and called my parents. When he got home, he looked inside but found nothing. I was glad it wasn't my room that was connected to the attic. My dog, Lila, and I were alone in the house. There was loud music playing in my room, but I could still hear Lila barking like crazy. As I was walking downstairs from my room, I heard Lila pushing her into the basement. The stairs were still barking. I turned on the basement light behind him. He was in an aggressive position parking at the closed door of the boiler room. I knocked on the door asking if anyone was there. Lila was going crazy at this point, jumping on the door, trying to break the door. I decided if there was really something inside I didn't want to see what it was. I pulled Lila by the collar and took her upstairs, and when my dad got home I locked the basement door. I told him to check the boiler room. But on his way there he saw that a ladder was placed on the wall next to the basement window and the window had been broken. My dad was worried and called the police, but I still didn't know what was going on. It turned out that Leo was barking at an intruder, and I would consider myself lucky that I didn't open the door. It was very common for me to be home alone at night because I only lived with my dad and his shifts changed from day to night when my dad worked nights. The shifts I worked were a lot of nights watching movies. On these nights, it took me a long time to fall asleep, so after turning off the TV and going to bed I lay there for probably half an hour. Then I heard a toy fall in my toy cupboard. It wasn't anything too suspicious, but it still scared me and brought me out. But then the door handle on my cupboard started moving. Finally opening the door I hid under my covers, not making a sound. There was an eerie silence for about 2 minutes, so I finally looked up. A figure was standing next to my bed outside the covers. Looking at me I screamed and started hugging the wall behind me. The figure looked out the window and then left the room. I stayed in that state for about an hour, then checked to see if he was really gone. The front door was open. It felt like he was gone. I couldn't sleep a minute that night. This story is from the perspective of a 16-year-old girl. There was a boy living in the room next to me who was obsessed with me. His name was Joey. Whenever I went out, Joey would come out. If he was waiting for me by his window, he was waiting for me. He was 17 years old and very strange and didn't seem to have any friends because he was always at home. I tried to give him every possible hint that I didn't like this guy, but he didn't get the message, so finally one day I had to tell him that I didn't like him and to leave me alone. The look on his face that day was something that wouldn't leave me. The kind of angry look a child gets when they can't give their parents a toy that's 17 years old, which is even more annoying. One night my parents left me to watch the house. I was working on a school project when I felt my bed shift a little low. I looked under my bed. I screamed when I saw Joey lying under my bed. I ran away as he tried to get out from under my bed. I ran to his house and rang the bell. After asking his parents to open the door at least 10 times, Joey didn't come out from my house, so I called the police. His parents begged me not to, but I ignored them. The police still found him in my room and arrested him. Apparently he admitted that this was not the first time he had hidden under my bed. They also scattered pictures of me in his room. The most disturbing was a picture of me sleeping, and it was taken from inside my room. I live in the countryside and I was often alone at home. We had no neighbors nearby. So I usually sat in the yard on sunny days and basked in the sun on sunny days. There was a time when the sun was shining and I was tanning in our yard when I saw someone standing in the woods looking at me. I ran up and sat up. I screamed. The guy came out of the woods and came to me saying he lived in the mountains and was wondering if I could help him with a broken water pump. I told him I was going out and I didn't have time. Of course it was a lie, but there was no way I was going to go with him. He went back into the woods. I was more shocked than ever after seeing him again by a rock, so I folded up my lounge chair and went inside. I made sure to close all the doors and windows. You would think that would be the end of it, but after about an hour it wasn't. I realized I had forgotten my sunglasses outside in the grass, so I went back outside to get them. I made sure the guy was nowhere to be seen. Then, before I could go outside, it took me a while to finally find my sunglasses, and I was scared when I looked up. This time I saw the man again. Although he wasn't in the woods, he was hiding behind our shed so that only half of his body was visible. I screamed that I was calling the police and ran inside. Just then the police came and wrote down my description of the man. Luckily I never saw him, because it happened to me when I was very young. I was 7 years old, but I still remember it, like it happened yesterday. I was sleeping on the roof of my grandmother's house, like I always did. When I was little, she had never driven a car in her life, so she would constantly walk long distances. One day while I was sleeping, she wanted to walk to the library, which was about 10 blocks away. I didn't want to walk that way. I was lazy, so she left and told me not to let anyone in. My grandmother was a strict person and didn't think about people, so it wasn't unusual for her to leave me alone. When I was so young, the phone rang. A stupid and curious little boy picked up the phone. There was a man on the other end. I remember who he was talking to. I told Danny, "Your parents are home, Danny." I said no. "So you're home alone now, Danny?" I said yes. "Where are you now, Danny? Do you know the address?" Somewhere in Queens." I told him okay. "Danny. Bye." Now he hung up. I thought twice and I don't remember. But the story doesn't end there. Unfortunately, I will say that about an hour later there was a knock on the door. I remembered my grandmother. So I sat down on the couch. "I saw you on the couch, Danny." My little heart sank. I saw him through the window, looking at me on the porch. He looked so scary, gray, ugly, and thickly bearded. I told him to go away. "Get me some candy in my truck, Danny." I ran to the guest bedroom where I was sleeping. After a while, I closed the door. I heard the back door slam. Then a sound and a sound. He was trying to break down the door. Something miraculous happened. I heard my grandmother scream loudly. She was screaming, "Get him out of the yard," and she was calling the police. I saw the man through the window driving away in his rusty pickup truck. My grandmother was trying to get the license plate number. Unfortunately, she couldn't remember, but she still reported his car to the police. My mother never believed that my grandmother would see me again, but I still know that if she had come back 10 minutes later, God knows what would have happened to me. I had recently moved out and I already had a ghost story to tell about the house. I moved into the house. It wasn't that interesting. It was a room that could accommodate 1 or 2 people, but I'll tell you right now. I started hearing strange noises coming from inside the walls. First in the kitchen and then in the bathroom. But on the 3rd night I started hearing them in my bedroom too. I was convinced that some kind of creature was living in my walls. I had to find a way to get rid of it. The next morning I didn't even have enough milk to fill my bowl. I couldn't believe that I hadn't realized that I needed more milk. In fact, I was eating all my food so quickly. I woke up in the middle of the night. It wasn't the sound of my breathing, but when I turned on the light it sounded like someone was breathing and the light went out. I did this because my mind was playing tricks on me the next day after I woke up. It was so hot, so I turned on the AC for the first time. I checked every vent and something. I peeked through the vent next to my bed. Flashlight, there was no duct behind the vent, just the inside of the wall. It looked like whatever air ducts were there had been removed. Unfortunately, I hadn't looked into the walls for the air conditioning system since I bought the house, so I didn't know about this. I had to sleep in the heat that night without AC, so I woke up very late and started flipping my pillow over and over. Then finally I heard the breathing again, but this time I was fully awake. I knew this time it was real. This time it was coming towards me. On the left, I looked to my left and looked at the air vent. The sound was definitely coming from there. I grabbed the flashlight again and shone it through the vent. I dropped it and screamed that someone's face was peeking through the crack in the vent. The first thing I saw was their eyes open and glowing. I screamed and ran out of the room. I soon found out that there was a crazy dangerous homeless guy living in my wall, and he had been eating my food ever since I moved in.